Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Education Matters with Jim O'Connell. You're very welcome. We're sitting here on Tuesday, the 25th of June, and at 6 p.m. So if you're watching live and you'd like to offer your opinion on anything or call in, you're always welcome. The number here is 640-3091. That's 640-3091. I'd like to give a quick plug, because I forgot it last week, for my camp that I've been involved with for a long time, and though I'm on the periphery of it now, that's at Manchester North Soccer, and it's the British Are Coming soccer camp, and you can go to MNSL, Manchester North Soccer League website, and register your kids there right now. It's a wonderful institution that's been running for many years. I think this is year 27 or so, and camp is on the last week of July, and it's for kids from 4 years up to 16 or so. It's always a good time, and because it's held at Livingston Park in the Manchester North Fields there, in the afternoon, the kids have the availability to go to the Livingston Park pool, where they have a chance to swim, and especially in those hot days of late July, believe me, that's a good thing. So anyway, whether it's that camp or any of the other many camps that are going on, there are lots of opportunities for parents to have their kids partake in fun activities in the summertime. And if you go to the various websites in the city, if you search through perhaps Manchester School District, mansd.org website, or you go to the city's website or the Office of Youth Services, the library probably might be the best of all. If you go to the Manchester City Library and inquire there, not alone can you get lots of information on what young people might be able to do, oftentimes it includes items that are free of charge or very low charge for Manchester residents. And so it's if you're sitting at home, and I know some parents, I know when my kids were younger, and sometimes in the summertime people sat around and thought, okay, now what do we do tomorrow? So obviously the pools and the splash pads and all those things are all great, but there are lots of exciting things happening. Thursday nights, the track and field at opposite the back room at Livingston Park, there's a track meet there, and some people show up as teams, and others, many show up as individuals, and parents bring their kids there, and there's like a track meet where children and not so young, teenagers, etc., run there in a track meet. Chris LeBerge, the Central High School soccer coach, runs a clinic on Thursday nights, which is free to. It's designed as a get ready or a start to increase skills project for kids who will be playing soccer in the fall, especially high school kids in the city of Manchester. But all are welcome. So it's not just for. It's not just for Manchester Central kids. You will often find kids there from other schools in the city as well. No, these are all free opportunities. But the point, I guess, really is that there are lots of resources, and it's a matter of parents reaching out and like I said, the library might be a wonderful way to do that. The other thing I'd like to do is, last week when I was on, as we got to the end of the show, I wanted to talk about a couple of things, and I did talk about the whole Booked for Summer thing. And there's a program, the Bookmobile will be traveling around the city. And there's a schedule. I won't reread it again now, but there's a schedule that starts next week for the Bookmobile, and if you can't get to the library, the Bookmobile goes to where kids are at. And so this goes to the point that I've made many times, that kids who continue to read during the summertime will have a substantial advantage academically when they go back to school in September. And though none of us want to hear that now, as we're here in the last week of June and anticipating 4 or 9 weeks of sunshine and fun and being outdoors and being on vacation. I think vacation's great and free time is great, but continuing to read and to keep the cranial juices flowing during the summertime is a very good thing, and research demonstrates that it's a key indicator, or an important indicator at least, of success in the fall. I frankly have heard. I frankly don't understand it, but I've heard some parents, and I think last year it reached a bit of a crescendo, where Dr. Vargas, the former superintendent, was anxious to see every kid in the district read during the summer, and as part of that effort, kids were perhaps you could describe it as given an assignment to. There were assigned books to read, and there was a pushback from, I think, a small number of parents against it, whose thought, as I understood it, was that our kids are on vacation and they shouldn't have to be, why is the school district pushing our kids to do work during the summer? I think that's entirely the wrong view, and those parents who think that way, I think they should just reconsider it. I can understand if, as a parent, I thought that some outside agency, be that the local school district or anybody else, was demanding things of my kids that were unreasonable, then I would be in support of that view. But there's nothing like that here. It's a good thing, and any kid, any parent who's sitting there and sitting at home, and if you're watching this and you have kids at home, you should be doing whatever you can to encourage them to read. And I understand that there are kids who just aren't ready to read, or don't want to read, or don't get great joy from reading. And there are some kids who amazingly sort of come out of the womb ready to read, and they're walking around with books under their arms. That's quite a minority. And so for most kids, if they're given the opportunity to look at some shiny object like a smartphone or a TV screen, I think about them as sort of chewing gum for the mind, whereas a book is actually exercise for the mind. So I just think that if parents have kids who don't like reading, then the point would be to encourage them. Not force them, but to encourage them, to give them some guidance. One day that kid will find a book and a subject that they like, and that could be the difference in their life. So, the big news really is, I guess, if you're into education, education happens everywhere. And it happens in our schools, it happens in the home. And we know from all the talking that we do during the year about academic readiness and developmental readiness and those things, that we have kids coming into our schools every year, certainly coming into kindergarten and first grade. And right there, there is a vast difference between the capabilities of one kid and another. And oftentimes, it's based on many things, but oftentimes it's based on the richness of the environment from which they come. And by richness, I don't mean money, although everything has an influence. By richness, I mean by the richness of the environment. I mean, are there books in the house? Have they been encouraged to read? Are their parents using a wider vocabulary? Have the parents opportunities to take, and have these kids been given the opportunity to visit places of interest, to expand their horizons, either physically or not? But all of these things have an influence. And in the end, we have kids coming in, presenting themselves to schools, some of whom who've been have been in an environment that is stimulus-free, and so they are deeply challenged when they arrive in school, and other kids are in a very in a much different position. So all kids are not created equal. Sadly, they may be at the moment of conception or at the moment of birth, but they're certainly not by the time they've they're quickly their paths diverge. And this is why I'm a strong advocate of public schools and and robust public schools, because this is the opportunity we have to level playing fields and to help those kids who don't have the advantages that some of us do. So go out there, find a place to play, do something different, use the opportunity that the summer gives us. This time off is time off, but it's time off to do other things. And I understand parents have to work, etc. But still, as parents, I think we have an obligation to ensure that our kids have lots of free time, lots of time to relax, but also have a time that's I was going to say structured, but certainly that has some element of education to it. So, with that said, the other thing I wanted to do from last week was to talk about the locations and the times for the free meals. So I think 59% of students in the city of Manchester today are on the free and reduced lunch program. The number may be higher than that. That's the official number, but it is known that the number of kids as they go up in grades, the number of kids who should be on free and reduced lunch lists is lower than it should be, because despite whatever people can do to take any stigma away from the idea of having free or reduced lunch, there still is some, and that's quite a pity, but it's a reality. And so young teenagers surrounded by other impressionable teenagers in high school will often choose not to volunteer the fact that they are entitled to free and reduced lunch. And it's also true that many kids who are entitled to free and reduced lunch end up not availing themselves of it for exactly the same reason. However, there is a large, so the 60% or 59.8% or whatever it is, I can look it up in a minute, of kids in the city of Manchester who are on free and reduced lunch. That's a huge number, and the city does do a good job of having this free meals. They started on June 14th. It runs through to August 30th at various times throughout the city. And I'm having difficulty on this website for some reason, because it wants me to log on to something. But if I can't get it, then we'll just let it be. Let me see. School day start. Fine. Yeah, that particular document won't open, but you can find the information obviously at City Hall, obviously at the school district. If you call either of those two places, or you go to the library, and you'll be able to find out the times. And the meals are distributed at different times in different parts of the city. They're free for all school-aged children. So I know that it's a concern for many educators and administrators and teachers, principals, etc., in the city of Manchester, that a lot of the kids who they know depend upon the Manchester School District for their food on a daily basis during the year, that they worry about what might happen to them in the 2 months that they're out of school. So I think it's important that people be aware that that is there, and that and for the rest of us, those of us who are lucky enough not to have the need to avail of such programs, I think it's important that we realise that exists in our community. Just one thing I meant to say about the bookmobile thing for a minute is that there's an opportunity at the bookmobile as a volunteer, for adults to volunteer, and you can volunteer for a limited amount of time or a larger amount of time. There's an opportunity for adults to do things like help kids to select books. There's an opportunity to read books to kids or with kids. So if you do want to go out and make a difference this summer in some small way, it might be a huge thing in a young person's life. There's a saying in in the Bible about the harvest is great, but the laborers are few, and that's indeed the case. And so lots of people spend time. I call them, or many people call them, Facebook warriors nowadays, and they're on Facebook talking about they should do this or they should do that or they should do something else. Well, all of us have some time in our week where we can give of ourselves, and there are lots and lots and lots of opportunities. Like I say, the harvest is great, but the laborers are few. I talked to somebody 2 weeks ago at the CASA program, which is the advocates, the legal advocates for students in the criminal justice system or in the foster care system, and they are maxed out with they don't have enough people to meet the need. So anybody who has some time on their hands who could do that, there's a huge issue there. And then I know that the foster care system is bursting at the seams, and there are kids who are in need of foster families. So anybody who has the interest in doing it or would like to find out about it, then you can just Google foster care in New Hampshire and find the various agencies, or go to the Department of Health and Human Services and you will find the site there. But there's a huge need. Even in the fifth or sixth richest state in the United States, there's a huge need for services, and that can't all be done by government agencies. It's not always going to be best done by government agencies, and that's coming from me, a guy who's a great believer in the common good. But I also believe that individuals like you and me have to step up and not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. So anyway, lots to consider, lots of opportunities. The main point I would make is that if you are a sentient human being who's aware of the things going on in the community around you and the community at large, and if all you're doing is just talking about it, or perhaps even as bad as criticizing others in the efforts that they're making, then I think there's time for some self-reflection and perhaps thinking about what you and all of us can do to help with these issues. All right, so I was going to have a little bit of fun with this, with the upcoming. We have upcoming elections, and here in the city of Manchester for the Board of School Committee and for the Aldermanic Committee, and there's been some shuffling around of chairs on the decks, so to speak, here, as various people are putting their names forward to run for office. There's a large change coming to the Board of School Committee, although less large than it might have been, given that one member has decided now that he is not retiring. But it's easier on the Aldermanic side to look at the horse race there, because it appears that let me just shut this down, sorry. It appears that I think people wait until I'm on TV to call my phone about things, but So on the Aldermanic side, there obviously all the incumbents could lose, but the first thing we look at, I guess, is which incumbents are running and which are not. From what I know, and this is not a definitive list because I haven't talked to everybody, but in Alderman in Ward 1, Kevin Kavanagh is running again, as is Will Stewart in Ward 2. So those two wards, and maybe some wonderful people will run against them, I don't know. Those are two of my two aldermen that I respect. In Ward, I guess I respect them all in one sense or another. I don't mean to say it like that. In Ward 3, interestingly, Alderman Tim Baines is not going to be going forward, and I met him the other day briefly, and I just said to him that I thanked him for his what will be now 2 years on the board of mayor and aldermen. He's a busy guy. He runs the Mint Bistro on Elm Street, and there are lots of great New Manchester nowadays has lots of great places to go and eat. And I have to tell you that that Mint Bistro is a wonderful place. So I also have to just do another shout out, because amazingly, I don't know why this happened, but it's not that I'm out eating every night, although I might look like I am. I was out for the first time, I have to admit, even though I've thought about it many times. I just, for some reason, didn't get around to it. And the other night, my wife and I, we went to the North End Bistro, which is north of Bridge Street, and on the corner of like maybe Orange Street or something like that, on the Orange or Pearl or some of those. But anyway, like across from the North End Super Ed. And I was very pleased. The food was beautifully presented. It was a nice place. So I was. I'll be going back there again. So great. And I don't want to single out just those two places, but we are so fortunate, because when I came to Manchester first 26 years ago, to be truthful, there were very few places where we would have friends come. Having lived in Boston for a while, there were people who would come up from Boston, and it was always, we would end up going out of town to find some place to eat, because there really, there wasn't anything great, or the ones that were great were few and far between. The back room was always there, etc. I'm not slighting those, but there was very little choice. And today we're spoiled for choice. It's just phenomenal, the amount of great places. So Tim Baines owns one of those, and Tim ran again, defeated Pat Long, who a long time incumbent in Ward 3. But Tim is not running again. And I made the point to Tim when I met him last week. I said, not that he needed me to say that, but there's nothing wrong with being a one-term alderman. I'm not a fan of term limits. I think they're just a bad idea. I think the voters have the opportunity to limit terms, and so. But having said that, I think doing what Tim Baines did, which is to come in, particularly on the issue around the vagrancy issue and issues affecting businesses on Elm Street in particular, but in Manchester more broadly, he came in, he pushed for solutions, he he forced change, and. So he deserves credit for coming in, doing what he said he would do, and now sort of getting out and going back to run his beautiful restaurant. So Ward 1 and 2 will be incumbent, or I don't know if the result will be that the incumbents will win, but they are running. So there'll be a change in Ward 3, and the scuttlebutt there is that Pat Long will rerun. Pat Long, who's currently, he's the member at large who took over Ms. Tezier's seat on the school board. So Pat Long, as I understand it, will run for his old seat in Ward 3. And then Chris Herbert, I've heard nothing, so I presume that he will be running in Ward 4. Tony Sapienza in Ward 5. A guy who is now in his second, maybe this will be his third term, but Tony has come onto that board as an independent voice and face, and I like that he doesn't take the soup, as they used to say back in Ireland, accept the status quo, etc., but is there. And I don't always agree with him every time, but I always know that he's thinking about the votes that he makes, and he's making them based on a set of criteria that I like. So I'm glad to see that Tony's running again. Elizabeth Moreau, I don't know Elizabeth Moreau, whether she's running or not. I presume she's running again. She's a lady with young children who would be now running for her second term. Well, she replaced Alderman Nick Pappas back 2 years ago, and ran out the rest of his term when he left and bought a house elsewhere. So she's completed her first full term, and but she does have a young family, and kudos to her for I don't always agree with her with her votes on things, but there's nobody that I agree with all the time. So there's nothing. Nobody says you have to agree with Jim O'Connell in order to be a good alderman. Alderman Shea then in Ward 7. So we know we'll have a change in Ward 3. Alderman in Ward 7, Bill Shea. So it turns out there's Bill Shea is not running for alderman this time. I believe he's in his late 80s. And Bill, I'm sorry if I got that wrong, but Bill is the dean of the board, so to speak. He's the guy who's been there the longest, has given Trojan work to the city of Manchester over the years, and deserves the gratitude of everybody in the city for all the time that he has put in. Being an alderman, as being a school board member, it's not easy. It's you put up with a certain amount of, maybe abuse might be too strong, but a certain amount of definitely second guessing, and you get people like me in the chattering class who like to comment on the way in which you voted from time to time. But anybody who spent the decades of public service that Alderman Bill Shea has deserves the gratitude of the people of Manchester. And so he is planning, as I understand it, to run for the school board in Ward 7. It'll be interesting to see if his loyal constituency in Ward 7 will elect him, having elected him all these times to the Aldermanic Committee, will elect him to the school board committee, and that'll be an interesting seat. But it will make a difference when we're looking around the table at the board, mayor and alderman, and to see at least one face there in the seat for Ward 7. Next to Joe Kelly Lavasser, it'll be interesting to see what face will be there. Ross Terrio, who's been on my show here a few times and is currently the school board member for Ward 7, he is running. He is running for Bill Shea's seat, and hopefully, by the way, next week there will not be a live show next week, because it's the community television studios are closed for the July 4th for a number of days running up to July 4th. But in the week after that, hopefully we'll be in a position. We'll be talking about the candidates. Maybe it'll be 2 weeks after that, because the date for people to decide whether they're running or not, and to declare whether they're running or not, I think I don't want to misinform anybody, but it might be ends on July. I think it ends on July 10th. So it's pretty soon that someone has up until then. There's a week that the nominations are open. You have to go to City Hall and submit your nomination if you intend to run, and I believe it's July 10th, but don't please rely on that information. But I do rely on the fact that it's, the elections, the primary will be in September, the elections will be in November, but it is very shortly that the opportunity to run will be foreclosed in the next few weeks. So if you're interested in running and thinking of running, and I encourage everybody to run, people should pay attention to those dates. All right, so Ward 3, Tim Baines, Ward 7, Alderman Shea, those are two changes. And then in Ward 8, John Cataldo has decided he's not running either. And another gentleman who has come onto the board, given his service to the city for a term, and is now not going to run again. And all of these people deserve our gratitude for having given time to the city, whether we agree with them all the time or not. Barbara Shaw, as I understand it, in Ward 9 is running again. I certainly haven't heard anything to the contrary. In Ward 10, Bill Barry is definitely running again, and he's a very popular alderman, and one that I support fully. And he actually had his launch over at the Rayford Club a couple of weeks back, which was very well attended. And then we have in Ward 11, we have Alderman Norman Gamache, who was actually in attendance at Bill Barry's launch, and Norman Gamache is running as well in Ward 11. And then we have in Ward 12 Keith Hirschman. Now, back in the day, or back I don't know when in the day, back earlier in the year, there were rumors that Keith Hirschman was going to run for mayor. Perhaps he never intended that, and it was just a rumor. But there was a time when I thought that we'd be talking about a vacancy in Ward 12 that Keith Hirschman would run for mayor. It'll be interesting to see what happens in Ward 12. This time there was a young candidate whose name just escapes me for a minute, who did very well in that seat the last time. But Keith Hirschman's been an alderman. Well, he was an alderman for a while, and then for a while he was not. And a few elections ago, maybe 3, he ran again, and so he's a very familiar face around the table of the aldermanic chambers in the city of Manchester. And of course, then after that, there's the 2 aldermen at large, who are well known to all of us, and that's Dan O'Neill and Joe Kelly-Levasseur. Need I say more? I think most people are aware of who Dan O'Neill and Joe Kelly-Levasseur are. It'll be interesting. I know that Katie DeRochers, who is currently on the Board of School Committee, she has announced that she's running for the Alderman at Large position. So it'll be interesting to see if anybody else puts their hat in that ring. But one of the things that's interesting is that the last election, and maybe the one before, but certainly last time out, there was no competition. There was no primary, and there was nobody competed for positions at the alderman at large position, and also at the school board at large position. So at very least, we know now that we're going to have an election. We'll have people to vote for in those 2 at-large positions, and that's interesting in and of itself. So with that said, we have, when we count down through them, the people who are no longer running are John Cataldo, Bill Shea, and Tim Bain. So as a minimum, we'll have a change of 3 out of 14. It gets much more interesting, if that's what you want to call it, when you look at the Board of School Committee, and there we're going to see an awful lot of change. Of course, I should mention that, of course, Joyce Craig is running for re-election for mayor, and running in opposition is Victoria Sullivan, who was formerly a state rep who lost her position in the last election, and she's running against Joyce Craig. And I noticed that this past week that Victoria Sullivan chose another set of ward captains from the 12 wards in Manchester, and I had been critical of some of the comments of a previous ward chairman, not all of them, but so she has strengthened up that ward chairperson thing, and I don't know if that was in response to a need or whatever, but clearly that's the case. But Joyce Craig is out and running. She had her launch last week. I wasn't there, but there were a large number of people showed up for her office opening, and she seems to have the wind at her back. And despite the story being promulgated by some in the city, it would seem to me that she has. Like I say, she has the wind at her back. So we'll see. This is democracy, folks, and you, the people of Manchester, decide. So, there could be a dark horse come from outside. I don't mean outside the city, obviously, but somebody could declare themselves in July, and it would be a surprise to all of us. Who knows? I would say watch this space, because things are quite dynamic. Moving on to the Board of School Committee. So we know that in Ward 1, Sarah Ambrosi, who is at least a 5-termer, Sarah Ambrosi is no longer running for the Board of School Committee in Ward 1, so that will make for an interesting race there. And there are a number of people who are already lining up, perhaps, is the word for a run at the Ward 1 position. So that's going to be changed. Now, secondly, Ward 2 is interesting because Dave Scannell resigned from the school board a couple of months ago because he sold his house and moved out of that ward. And so there was a replacement named, and an old hand in in Manchester politics, Kathleen Kelly Arnold. Was nominated and was placed on that position. So she currently holds the seat in Ward 2. I'm not sure if she's going to run again. I'd love to hear if any of these people want to call in. I'd love to hear from them, 640-3091. But so it's not clear to me. It's probably 50-50 in my mind, but I don't know. So Sarah Ambrosi will be gone in Ward 1. We'll see what happens in Ward 2. I presume, but I don't know, that Mary Georges will run again in Ward 3. I know that Leslie Want will be running in Ward 4. And then Ward 5 with Lisa Freeman. I'm guessing that Lisa will run again. I haven't heard any different. And as will Dan Bergeron in Ward 6. So on that side of the table, when you look at City Hall at night time and you look at the horseshoe shape in front of the mayor, everything on the left-hand side, as we look at it, we're going to have a change in the first seat in Ward 1, perhaps in Ward 2, where we've just had a change. But it's very likely, it seems to me, that the rest of the way down will remain the same until we get to the end in the when we get to the at-large position on that side. So then, when we get to the other side, we have Ross Terrio, who will not be running for the Board of School Committee because he's now going to run for the automatic side. I'd be surprised in Ward 8 if Jimmy LaHoo wasn't running again, as I would with Art Beaudry in Ward 9. I think there'd be quite the fanfare if Art Beaudry were to announce that he didn't intend to run, but I'm pretty sure he did. And the last time, if I remember correctly, the two at-large members went unopposed, and as the only other one I think who was unopposed was Art Beaudry, as I understand it. And then the news of the week, so to speak, is that Dr. John Avard, who has served many terms also, another stalwart of the school board, he had previously announced that he was no longer running. And I believe that his kids have aged out of the system. And, of course, there are many people who are on the board who don't have kids in the system either. But so Dr. Avard announced this week that he had changed his mind and that he is going to run. And he said that one of the reasons he's going to run is because of the fact that there is going to be such a large turnover on the board, that a lot of the people who've been there a long time, who have sort of the institutional knowledge, are going to be retiring, and so are not running again, or moving on to other positions. So he changed his mind, and John Avard is now going to run in Ward 10, and anybody who thought that there was some space had opened up for them, anybody living in Ward 10 who said to themselves, well, now that Dr. Avard has gone, I think I'll run. I'm not suggesting they shouldn't, but, John Avard has been there a long time and has had lots of opportunity to work for the people of Manchester, and certainly has always been a strong voice in favour of the in defence in particular of West High School, but also in defence of the west side of the city. And I don't always agree with him. Actually, there are things I fundamentally disagree with him about, but again, a guy who has put in his time, so to speak. And so, but that brings us to Ward 11, where we have Katie DeRochers. So just like Ross Terrio has decided to leave the school board and run for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen in Ward 7, we have Katie DeRochers, who is no longer going to run for the Ward 11 position for Board of School Committee, but is going to, and has already begun a campaign to run for the Alderman at large position. So that we're going to see a change there. Ward 12, I really don't know about Kelly Thomas, and I don't mean Board Member Thomas any disservice of any kind. I heard that she may not be running, but that's scuttlebutt. I don't really know. So maybe I shouldn't even have said those words, because the fact is I don't know. Her phone number's right here on the website. I could call her up and ask her, but in any case, we'll see what happens with Kelly Thomas in Ward 12. And then that brings us to the two at-large positions. And those, of course, are Rich Gerard in one of those positions and Patrick Long in the other. Now, we know that the last time, as I said, there wasn't any competition for those at-large positions. This time, as I understand it, Patrick Long will not be running, so there will be at least one open position there. It's not clear to me what Rich Gerard is interested in doing. I think he probably wouldn't be. I wouldn't be the first person he'd reach out to say to give a heads up, but I'd always be happy to hear from him. But I'm not sure. I guess one should imagine that he would go forward and run for at large again. But I don't know. Let's presume he will. But there will be a change there. A couple of candidates. Lady Laura Quiroga is running, and Jean Martin, he has a position in the City Democratic Committee. I'm not au fait with that, but I know that that's where he comes at it from. He also has young kids, and I presume they're in the school system. So there are at least two candidates already in the public domain who are running for at-large, and I have reason to believe that there may be others, but we'll have to wait and see what the future brings. So all in all, on the school board, so we're likely to see. We know we'll see a change at the at-large position, at least one of them. We know Ward 11, Ward 7, Ward 1. And perhaps Ward 2, not knowing. So that could be a change of, let's see, and that's besides what you, the voters, decide to do, right? This is just people who don't run again. It would be 1, 2, let me see, 3, 4, 5. So 5 out of 14. It was 6 out of 14 before John Aver changed their mind, and we don't know. There might be others. So. Since we won't have a show next week, the time for nominating people or for people to submit their names for running, etc., will be on or about when the next show runs. And if I could see on here, let me see. So I think So the middle of the week that when we next go on, we'll be here. Hopefully, it should be. The 9th, and I think that's the week that decisions need to be made. So it'll be interesting to see who is nominated by then. But in Manchester, there's always this thing at the end of the week of the nominations are open for a week. And there's a 5 p.m. deadline when the city clerk's office closes at 5 p.m. on the Friday, if it finishes on Friday. And then it reminds me of, when you go to a penny sale and the penny sale is when you put the tickets in. Is it, when you have to write your name down in the auction where you write stuff down, the table auction, whatever the correct word for it. And if my wife was here, I depend on for all these kinds of things with her expertise in these matters. She'd be able to tell me, or practically anybody else could. But whatever it's called, when you write your name down on the sheet and then the next person writes their name below it, whatever it is. Well, it reminds me of that. You go to some of these auctions. For years at St. Catherine's School in Manchester, they have a wonderful fundraiser every year, their auction night, and it's always a fun night. And I spent many a good evening there. And they'd have their auction, and there would be a scramble, and you'd have, God bless her, Sister Janet would announce, or whoever was doing the announcing, that table 1 will close at in 5 minutes, and then you'd have people scramble over to table 1 to see who had, if there were any bargains, if somebody had only bid, like the highest bidder was only $5 or something, and the sheet that had remained empty for 2 hours would suddenly get, people passing each other out. So there's an element of that in elections in Manchester, where when you get to Friday afternoon, there are people looking to see, there's nobody running in ward whatever, and so-and-so's running in ward something else. So it'll be interesting, but we'll know in about 2 weeks. Either way, when they come in, when they come back, there's still a lot of time left on this board because they're now finished until there are meetings tonight for curriculum, I think, or some maybe perhaps, or facilities, but they're on, the last one's on right now, actually coming to an end shortly, I'd presume. But then they're finished until late or mid-August, like August 23rd or something, the week before or so, before school goes back. But then there are months, the end of August and September, October, November, and December. So there are there's another 4 months of work to be done, and a hell of a lot of going on, because as was reported last night by Manchester Proud, the Manchester Proud process continues, with lots of work being done by lots of wonderful, well-intentioned, capable people, and in the city of Manchester, and so that will be happening. And of course, I would hope that these school board members, especially those who will not be running again, will and the aldermen will use their final months in office in this term to stand up and fight for the Manchester City schools and for the kids and families of Manchester. And I know that's something that's abused by others, and it annoys me, frankly, when I hear people say, for instance, that somebody who votes to not to cut teachers or not to do something, and some complainer from the lunatic extreme will say, oh, they're voting against the families of Manchester, because in their worldview, the families of Manchester want the school district to get the least amount of money possible, and anybody who wants to spend a dime is somehow voting against families. So I guess it's not very helpful to use the terms, voting against the families and children of Manchester, because on the far right in this city, that's seen as doing anything that might actually help the schools. So in this case, I mean the entirely the opposite. I thought it was interesting when we look at, one of the issues is going to be the real things going on in our schools, and part of what's going to contribute to that is the large exodus of staff that we had from the district this year. The difference in salaries this year, because the newer people coming in will have lower salaries than the people who are leaving, based on seniority, etc. So from the numbers last night, it appears that the city is going to be saving almost $1 million because of senior staff who are leaving. And what I think is a shocking indictment of the city of Manchester, and particularly of the school board and of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, but particularly the school board. There were about 50 long-term teachers who were announced at the school board meeting 2 weeks ago. Some people had one lady, Mrs. Mirabile, at Central, had done a total of 42 years at Central, 7 years previously at another school in the district, for a total of 49 years. 49 years of working in the Manchester School District. And you think about all the faces that she has seen and all the people she has helped and given a joy of writing or reading or whatever she brought to them. There's no question in my mind that there are untold hundreds and hundreds of kids who've been affected by her work over those years. And anybody, if you think about, if you owned a restaurant, if you owned a gas station, if you were working for St. Mary's Bank, or the Bellwether, or whatever, any place in any of the businesses in the city of Manchester, any of the we don't think about high-tech companies as being around a long time, but there are lots of companies in Manchester that have been around a long time. And if they had a 50-year-long employee, first of all, just think about the very effort of that, of getting up every day and going to work for 50 years and doing a good job. The indictment on the city is that of the 50 or so people who were named for retirees, longer-term retirees, only 4 people showed up. It was striking that the mayor was standing there surrounded by the 14 school board members, and they read out each person and the school they were from and their years of service. And they had a plaque or a commendation, not a plaque, but a folder with somebody's name in it, maybe say a certificate of gratitude for each person. And people were aware that this opportunity was there and that they would be recognized by the city, and that the board wanted to thank them for their service. And out of 50 something teachers in the district, only 4 came to accept certificates from the city. That tells you a lot about the way in which teachers have been treated in the city of Manchester and how they feel. Because if I was retiring after having worked for 49 years in a school district, and the last year and a bit that I was there that I didn't get the cost of living increase that I'd been promised, that out of the last 6 years I worked without any cost of living increase for half of that time, that my people around me, my friends, my colleagues, the people I worked with, had been given false information, had been made promises by the people of Manchester through the school board. Those promises were broken. They had chosen to work in Manchester because of the deal they were promised by the city of Manchester, and that promise was taken away. And there's a lot of work to be done in the city of Manchester to restore lots of things. But one of the things that needs to be restored is the good faith and confidence of the teachers of Manchester in the Board of School Committee and in the people of Manchester. And the people of Manchester need to demonstrate in the upcoming elections very clearly whether they support public education or they do not. Our public education structure is under attack in numerous ways. We have people within the system and on the Board of School Committee who are not committed to public education, who are derogatory about teachers. It amazes me how two-faced they are, that these people can go on social media and mock teachers and denigrate teachers and do it vociferously and do it often and do it in multiple venues online, and then come in and sit at a school board meeting and pretend that they are there and that they're doing it honorably and they're doing it with the best interests of the school children and schools of Manchester in mind. And clearly, my ire is based on the fact that they are duplicitous, they are two-faced, and that's not me saying they're two-faced because I think I can read what's in their minds, and somehow I'm ascribing things to them that I imagine are there. I'm going by their words and their actions and what they have done. So it's important that the people of Manchester make good decisions in the upcoming elections. Let's take a quick call here at the end. Good evening, caller, and welcome. We've got about 5 minutes.
Thank you, Jim, for taking my call so late.
Oh, hi, Phil. How are you?
Caught the last part of your show. It's Phil, number one. Thank you for doing all you do.
I do just a little tiny bit.
Still doing it.
Tiny bit, Phil.
And I agree with almost everything you said, right up until you got to the part where school board members that are denigrating teachers on social media and blah, 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 and I get that. And,
yeah.
And I can accept that. I'm a school teacher, and all right, so be that as it may. The thing that bothers me even more than that, and I'm talking specifically because she spoke the other night, Ward 4, Leslie Want, about how much she loved teachers, and she was a fourth-generation teacher, and she taught in New York and Rochester in a inner city district, and how much she knows teachers do things, and then she votes. Her votes don't show that she supports us. So, number one, thank you for your input. Number two, I agree with 95% of what you say. But number three, where you and I you go left and I go right, or vice versa, is I understand the enemy. What I don't understand is the people that are supposed to be with us
Right.
that are stabbing us in the back. When it
Right.
comes time to write the check or speak up or stand up, they're not there.
Right.
And that is so disingenuous. It's worse to me. I understand these other people. We could put names on it. We don't need
Right.
to do that because
Right.
we're not going to, we're not in the art of, calling people out.
Right. Well, we are, but we're not going to do it today and all the
Okay,
time.
I'll do it.
No, you
Rich
don't. No,
Girard
no.
Against Leslie Want. I know what Rich Girard's feelings are, and I appreciate it, and
Yeah.
I get where he's coming from, and I respect the fact that he'll speak his mind. Leslie Want will tell you one thing and do another. And if and until we straighten those people out, we have
Right.
absolutely zero chance.
Right. Right. Okay, well, we'll have to agree to disagree because, when people talk about, like, saying what they really mean, etc., I would just go back and look at last night's Board of School Committee meeting, and I would say that there was a difference between what Alderman Gerard, School Board Member Gerard, had to say in response to the Nellie May-sponsored group and what he has said elsewhere. But let's leave that as I prefer.
Nestle Quick. Jim.
Yeah. I got a minute.
Rich Girard doesn't want to pay teachers. We get it. Leslie Want, who is the former partner with you with Manchester Better Education or whatever, or her husband was.
Citizens for Manchester
and,
Schools.
My property values and the kids and blah, blah, and I support teachers.
Yeah.
But when it comes right down to it, it's like, well, we can't pay you, I'm sorry, but I'll take the insurance.
Okay.
So you can talk about all the other right-wing things you want.
Right.
When it comes down to it, when the rubber hits the road, we don't have any friends. So the guys that are trying to outsource education or homeschool or
Right.
willy-nilly or whatever you want to talk about, that, and to use your phrase, oh, look over here, I'm dangling a little light.
Right. Little shiny object.
They're not the problem
Right.
anymore.
All right. So, Phil, I'm sorry to cut you off.
We already know about them.
Right.
What the problem is the 14-2 votes or 12-3
Right.
or whatever it is. We
All
have
right.
no support.
Okay, so I have to let you
That's
go.
what's
I'm
gonna
down.
happen.
Phil, I'm down to 1 minute. I got to go. They're going to shut me down. But thanks for the call. I always
bless you.
appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, man. Bye. All right, we are almost out of time. I'd love to take Phil up on some of that. Like he says, we agree on 95%, which is great. I'm amazed. If I could get my wife to agree with me 95% of the time, I'd be happy. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming to the end of this show. We won't have a show probably between now and July 4th. So, have a great July 4th weekend. Celebrate America and all that's great about it. And let's come out and pick some great candidates and have people run. Have fun. Stay safe. And I'll see you all in a week or two. Good night from Jim O'Connell. Bye-bye.